Took everything down from Thursday evening. Well, they had multiple things to put on splits. It's kind of for 3 o'clock and 2 o'clock and then you put it up. Yeah. So start flipping back and forth and then it's kind of busy on the so we need to not move the I guess basically. Is it cued by sound or by? Yeah, it picks up sound. It's very sensitive for sound. So that was the feedback when we did preparation for Dallas office to the Reagan Washington area office. That people we had them all and we just kept seeing it. So we could see us in the corner kind of teasing, but it was like 6 foot speeds. So it would go back and forth. Yeah. We'll see if this.
Thank you. You just saw me do it.
Is it just?
I guess that was it. Is that a hoot? It's not working.
There.
Hey, good. How are you? Hey, I'm sorry I haven't introduced myself. I'm Bailey. Nice to meet you today. Relatively new. I've been here a little over a year. Benton. Before we get going, when you speak tonight, if you could try and speak a little bit louder, because we don't have the microphones available, since we're not able to use that computer. And I'm going to be recording the audio of this. Right. And hopefully this will be good enough to pick it up. So this will be a backup. Right. Yep. So you all won't be able to see people online. Sorry.
We have folks online or
We have Charlie and David, Paul, and Patricia Wheeler. Just tonight. I mean, if IT were here, I'd ask them what's going on.
Scratch the presentation.
Oh,
That's fine. Sassy.
shoot. Maybe I'll keep meddling with it back there and see if I can get it to work.
Well, then we go ahead and call this meeting to order and welcome to new members, Megan Paffey and Peterson. Welcome. We're going to start off by putting Bailey on the spot while he's taking a break from their IT work. Just to update us on what's happened with the expansion proposals so far and what's happening now.
Great. On your table, there's a document. It's a letter that Ken Eklund submitted and wanted to share with the group. It's 3 pages long. I emailed it earlier, but you may not have had a chance to look at it yet. There are a couple of things. I think he gives a good overview of what the process has been and how the public hearings have been going. And there are just a couple things that I'd like to contest or dispute, I guess. At the bottom, highlighted in yellow, are my the points that I wanted to raise. It says people were turned away for a lack of accommodation, and that's not correct. There was an overflow room. At the kind of the first sentence or the last sentence on page 1, what happens if Republic walks away from the landfill? Who's responsible then? The landfill, it turns out, not Republic. And that's another one I'd like to bring up, that because Republic owns the landfill, they are on the hook. So it's Valley Landfills is the name. It's the permit holder and has been since Coffin Butte began as a landfill. But Republic still, because they own the landfill, they would be on the hook for monitoring the landfill for the following 30 years at least.
True if it was sold prior to another entity?
Right, if
whoever
it's-
that entity is.
Right, that's right.
You have to carry over that liability.
Yep.
And it could extend beyond 30 years. It is up to the state and regulatory agency to determine when a landfill can be considered inert and can be free of any kind of liability. It could be 40, 50 years. It all depends. And we're seeing that from the 90s now. We're 30 years beyond the 90s. We're seeing these landfills every 30 year. And they're not being closed. They're not being free from the liability. They still have to continue. So we're just starting to see that now. So it's going to be kind of a interesting future to see how that goes with landfills that have been capped since the 90s that have been closed. See how that post closure goes as we move forward.
I have a question. I think it's to Bailey or maybe Paul. So the landfill is owned by Valley Landfills? Is that right, or is it correct?
Yes, but they're owned by Republic.
Correct. Is Valley Landfills having staff, or is it a legal thing?
I can answer that. Valley Landfill is our legal entity.
Yeah, that's okay.
But Valley Landfill is owned by the public service, and the employees are employees of the
Public services. Okay, thank you.
Another one in that same paragraph, he says that staff is not reading them, the testimonials, and I've read probably 2,500 pages and I still have another 1,300 pages to go. So they are being read. And then towards the end, he says there are 9, at the very end, last paragraph, he says there are 9 tranches so far. And what he means by that is that there have been 9 packets of information of testimony loaded to the Mooney Docs on the Benton County website. And we're continuing to add to that as soon as they can get scanned and put into our system and named correctly. So more will be coming. There are actually 11 separate PDF documents that contain, because they were too large to put into one. So if you're following along and reading those, there are 11 of them up there now.
Can I make a comment? Is it okay if I make a comment on these, on Ken's statement? Okay, so on the first page, unprecedented universe. I think when I read through this, most of it is just factual at this minute in time, this person spoke, so on and so forth. But I think that is his own interpretation, and I kind of reject his statement that it went poorly for us. That's I think a poor characterization and kind of, you know, a little bit of an attack on us, and I do not feel that should be kind of considered in this. And but I do not know the full extent if this is a do-over. I think this is a natural process, legal process, or however you want to call it, for the committee or the commission's office or whoever, as this is the normal process that goes on. I could be wrong, maybe you can correct me. I think this is the normal way things are going. So to imply that this is a do-over for us. I think it's just an unfair characterization on our part, for representatives. Just want to make that known. Okay.
Well, maybe for the benefit of the group, you could explain your role on DSAC and maybe
sure.
too, if
Yeah.
time permits, Rachel, we could do introductions.
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, we want to go through the whole introduction now, or just,
Why don't you introduce
Okay.
yourself and then we'll do introductions after.
all right, my name is Paul Pastor. I'm environmental manager for public services for the state of Oregon, and I'm specifically stationed at Coffee Beach landfill. I've been there for 4 months and been on this committee since that time. That's my role in DSAC, is trying to bridge everybody together and come up with solutions to the ongoing, some of the issues and things that people are concerned about.
Bailey, can you just walk us through quickly what's gonna happen next? So we've had all these public hearings.
Yeah,
There's
so
Public comments. What?
yeah, public comment is still open until 6 p.m. on June 17th. That's also the time that the commissioners are the planning commission, that is, are going to meet to make a decision about the expansion. Yeah, I don't know. Well, no. I mean, if something comes in an hour before, but they'll be deliberating or they'll be thinking about it between now and June. So if something comes up in, the day of, it's probably not going to get in front of them, but would eventually be sent to them.
Go ahead, Jim.
Going back to Paul's point, it's a question of how this works. So if this document has been submitted to this committee, does this end up being posted somewhere? And is it like part of the record? And then if someone,
Talk about Ken's.
yeah,
I don't, is if he wants to submit it to the CUP, he has to do it to the CUP. This is not our obligation to submit anything. He has to submit it.
yeah, I was just trying to figure out if we are required, like, where does this go and should we address Paul's concern? Or is this just for our use and we hear you, but there's no action needed? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and if he's not here, can it be submitted through you? Is that permissible?
I'm not sure
I think so.
It's just a public comment.
Okay.
So you would just include it in minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Rachel, would this then be, I had the same question, Jennifer, actually, to process. So does this get submitted then, compiled as our annual report that goes to DEQ? Is that part of that, or I didn't know what to do with this either.
You could, I'm not quite sure how we would categorize it.
Yeah, I didn't know what to do with this
Yeah.
thing.
I think it's mostly just, I wanted Bailey to fill us in on what was happening with the expansion proposal. Ken offered to give some public comment, but he couldn't make it tonight, so he submitted it in email form. But, he goes in chronological order, so it's not a bad launching point to discuss what's happened so far. All right, any other questions or concerns? Okay, why don't we just then move on to the rest of the public comment section then? Is there anyone online who'd like to speak?
We have Paul. Neatfeld. Did I say it right, Paul?
Paul Neatfeld, thank you.
We can't hear you.
Hello, testing 1, 2, 3. It appears my mic is working.
I hear you fine, Paul,
Let me try something.
and I
Thank you.
bet that Charlie
Hold on
does
just a
too.
sec. Try now.
Hello, testing 1, 2, 3.
Good, it worked.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair Purcell and committee members. Just a couple of quick things. In researching the tonnage estimate issue that Mr. Payne and I presented on last meeting, I came across section 7C of the 2020 landfill franchise agreement, which states franchisee shall furnish copies of reports and other public information relative to the operation of the landfill to the county at the time the reports are submitted to the regulating agencies. I think Mr. Payne will be pursuing this, and I would just like to encourage DSAC to the extent that's necessary to assist in facilitating working with the franchisee to see that this is done. I think timely delivery of all these regulatory related reports would be a big benefit to the committee and to the public at large, and to those of us that are trying to track in detail what's going on with the landfill. So I just encourage, if there's anything you can do to assist that, I would certainly appreciate it. Item number 2 is, I see you have an agenda item to perhaps relax your meeting schedule, which I can certainly understand. But having sat through all the LU 24027 reports and testimony, I think there really is a need for landfill oversight and dialogue between the franchisee and this committee and the citizens on subjects such as conditions of development, conditions of approval, the intake tonnage monitoring, particularly with the closure of the ReWorld facility up in Marion County, methane and PFAS emissions, measurements and regulations, and specifically coming up soon, the 2024 Coffin Butte Annual Report. I think a dialogue on all those subjects and more would really be valuable, and no other Benton County citizens group has the responsibility that you do to facilitate this dialogue. And I think LU 24027 has just really highlighted the fact that I think there's a lot that could be done here to maybe facilitate that. So please bear this in mind as you consider your meeting schedule and the scope of the work you take on. Active oversight and engagement on the landfill is very much needed. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul. We appreciate it. To your second point, we have some of those subjects on our priority list already for things to work on the remainder of the year. Regarding your first point, are you referring to reports to DEQ?
Certainly ODEQ reports. Mr. Payne and I are particularly interested, of course, for our discussion last month about the quarterly solid waste disposal reports. So I think timely delivery of those would be helpful to us, because to wait for them to get submitted to ODEQ and then for us to submit a public records request to obtain them from DEQ really adds a lot of delay.
Well, yeah, I want to respond to that. So Bailey reached out to me, and with everything else I have going on, it's missed when I've read the thousands of page documents that I'm trying to get up to speed on. So Bailey was kind enough to reach out to try to provide reports when I submit them as per the franchise agreement, and I'll make every effort to do that. So move forward.
Okay,
so yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Bailey, is there anyone else online that?
Patricia, would you like to speak? Or it's Kevin.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So I looked, I don't see the agenda for the meeting packet below the link for this meeting. It's not posted there. I don't know if Paul was referring to this month's and he found it elsewhere, but I have that page open right now and it says being developed.
Kevin, can you refresh it? Because I just went to the disposal site.
Yeah, I did a few minutes ago.
Okay. It's showing up for me.
It says under development. It's not on the website. So.
All right. Well,
is it on? You're on the website, May 14th, Disposal Site Advisory Committee meeting.
Are you looking on the main Disposal Site Advisory Committee page or on some other page?
I'm looking at the Benton County Oregon.gov page. And it has
Disposal Site Advisory Committee, DSAC.
It says May 14th, 2025 Disposal Site Advisory Committee meeting. It gives the time, the place. There's a Zoom link, a meeting ID, a passcode, and below that it says agenda.
I would recommend recommend going to the disposal site advisory committee meeting page, and you can find the agenda link there.
Well, maybe it should say that on this page then,
Yeah,
so that other people know it too. I mean, it'd be nice to know what the agenda is before a meeting,
Yep.
is my whole thing. And the way the meeting's being run tonight with the owl, it's hard to tell who is answering questions, who is responding. So if people could give their name, like I don't know who answered for Valley landfill question. Valley landfill question. I don't know who answered that question. So
Okay.
it's just really hard to follow the meeting with this owl situation.
All right, thanks, Kevin. That's a good note. We should definitely get in the habit of doing that. And this is Rachel speaking.
Can you tell me who answered the Valley landfill question?
It was Paul Costa, the environmental manager.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
I see Patricia and John. Would either of you like to make comments?
I don't have any comments.
Thank you.
Pause in the agenda and take this time to go around the table and have everyone introduce themselves. I think we have both Charlie and David Huffman online, right?
Mhm.
Brent? You wanna start?
Brent Pulowski, lifelong resident of Corvallis.
Jennifer Beal, also lifelong, sorry. So I was feels like life, 1992, also work at OSU and an environmental chemist.
Peter Peterson, new member, resident since '94, this area, retired from HP in 20, former product steward there for 5 years, social environment.
Rachel Purcell, Corvallis resident since 2021.
Robert Kipper, I was born in Corvallis, last century, 1955. Grew up here, moved away for 40 years and moved back 6 years ago.
Again, Paul Costa, environmental manager, public services representative.
Chuck Gilbert worked in administration for a million, but only 39. No. I'm Dave Legacy. I've lived here since 1988.
New member Diane Cassidy. I've lived in Corvallis since 1986. Retired from Good Sam as a nurse, and moved here from Alaska, and always thought that I would leave here and go back to Alaska, but this place really grows on me. It's a beautiful place. We're gonna keep it that way.
Which part of Alaska?
Southeast Alaska, Rainbow. It's a nice spot.
Charlie, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Charlie Carroll, and I'm a retired physician, and I've been in the county, Benton County, for probably 25, 30 years. That's probably it.
Okay, and thank you. David Huffman, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm David Hackelman. Born in Coos Bay, Oregon. I moved to Corvallis the second time in 1978 and purchased land on Coffin Butte, where I've lived ever since. I was a retired professor at Oregon State and also retired chief technologist at Hewlett Packard.
Sorry, I was asking, are you the person in the county who lives closest to Coffin Butte?
I live adjacent to the landfill on the north side of the Coffin Butte, so I'd say I'm pretty close.
Yeah.
The geodesic zone is on your property, is that right?
Property abuts.
Yeah.
Great, thanks, Peter and Diane, do you have questions for us? Is there anything you're wondering about coming in? Will be fresh?
A question that I had when, somebody was asking if the reports that you file, is quarterly probably, that they also be filed to the county?
So there are requirements that, this is Paul speaking, for everybody online. We are required by a permit and our regulations to submit reports at regular intervals to certain regulatory agencies, whether it's state, EPA, county, whatever, but guys agree.
Sorry, just wanted to double check the recording.
What is in the franchise agreement that I was made aware of that I missed reading through all the stuff that I'm trying to get up to speed on is, as those are submitted, I should be submitting them to this committee, which I wasn't aware until Bailey sent an email today to say that. So anytime I submit reports to whether it's county, I'll provide them to Bailey to disseminate to the board, to this committee.
I was reading that one of the reports that, the county and the city would both like is the, tonnage report. And is that something that could be, is that one that you're?
That's something that Paul and Bailey have been going through quite a while now, and I think we're settled pretty close to where Bailey, you could probably speak better on it, but that's probably something that's kind of been settled out a little bit over the last couple months. I think March or April, we kind of figured it all out, I think, for the most part.
Yep.
But yeah, that's something that Brett, the general manager, has been working with them on. But that's a normal report that we would submit, and that to, I forget who now, but I usually have other people, there's reports I submit, there's report operations submit, there's report that my ES submits, so I need to get everybody in line, so when they submit stuff, I'm aware that they're submitting it at that time. Cause I'm not aware of some of the stuff that they submit.
Yeah, I was thinking specifically about the tonnage report.
Okay.
Because it sounds like from what I've been reading that is something that's only reported annually.
I think so, yeah.
And how, it
I'd
seems to me
verify that.
like it would be nice to know how often do you guys have to report to DEQ your tonnage report?
I think it's an annual report that was.
Only-
There's a quarterly reporting that you do.
Like I said, see, I'm not
and-
familiar with what operations, this is outside my sphere of influence or knowing. So I have to get with my teammates to say, hey, when you submit the stuff, I need to know so I can get those reports to this committee.
And for context, when Paul presented at the last meeting, what he was proposing is a way to look at the numbers that have been submitted each quarter to then kind of reverse engineer it to see what the payments are and to be sure that the payments are matching the tonnage for what Republic pays to the county for the franchise fee.
And that they can get a, like, better predictive capability.
Right, yeah, and then have kind of for budgeting purposes to have a better idea about what the actual income is going to be for the county.
So I guess my question is, does Republic have to file tonnage reports? And how often? I realize that to the city and the county, it's annual,
Quarterly, right, quarterly,
quarterly.
yeah.
So it sounded like from that presentation last month that wasn't happening quarterly.
No, it's been happening. What I've been having to do in the background is file a information request to the DEQ. And so that's why I'm working with Paul to expedite that process a little bit. One of the questions that we were really wrestling with was there are some materials that don't count towards the tonnage cap. And so that was working through those 80 or whatever it was, different material types to factor those out when calculating the qualifying tonnage.
It just seems like such important information, to know what's going in there and how much.
Yep. Yeah, I can share spreadsheets. We've got a lot.
I had one question, given that it seems to take such a long time to process things. And I think there's another 12 years possible landfill usage. What is the activity that you're doing to identify and locate another landfill?
That's outside my scope.
Is it,
Completely outside my scope.
is it something that takes a very long time, I would imagine?
Yeah, probably a decade.
Okay.
Probably decades to find. That's outside my scope. Yeah. And understanding right now, because we're not looking.
I have a,
Remember to say your name.
okay,
Everybody.
this is Dave Livesey, and I have a question for Paul. It's related but unrelated. So the 2024 annual report, we haven't seen that yet, the monitoring report. Do you have any idea what the schedule for that?
That's
is?
submitted, I believe, this month.
Okay.
Yeah, so it hasn't been submitted yet.
Okay, does it go to DEQ before we see it, or is it a simultaneous thing?
As soon as my consultant uploads it, I will have to have Bailey create a link, because it's about 500 megabytes.
Oh, it's a monster.
It is over 1,000 pages.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, so we should expect it within the next few weeks.
Yeah, I have to check back with my,
Okay, that's fine.
I forget what the exact date is. I think it's coming up
That's fine.
by the end of this
Thank
month, I
you.
think, so.
Okay,
That'll be a document too that the committee will review.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That this committee will review
right.
and provide formal comments to the public, the county, DEQ.
To the county. Yeah,
do we get to see it in draft form, Ms. Rachel? Or,
No, it's final form.
okay,
Yeah, there is no, I only see draft for just consistency, and you'll see final reports because it's due to DEQ by specific date, so there's no obligation for me to submit any kind of draft report to anybody.
no, okay. All right, so I'm just trying to figure out what to do with our agenda until the break at around 7. So we originally, we'll get to the meeting minutes in a second, but Jennifer was gonna give a presentation on PFAS. Bailey, do you want to try to do it in the second half and see if you can use the break to?
you know, I've been playing around with that thing. I
Yeah.
don't think I'm gonna get it figured out, unfortunately. And I'm sorry, Jennifer, that this has happened.
Okay, so maybe we can plan on doing that at the next meeting then, unless you want to do it without the assistance of audio visual aids.
Shadow puppets, come on.
Let's see, let me think about that for a second. Hadn't thought about that.
I mean, I can display it on the screen here, but it'll be a little hard to see.
So on the next meeting, where are we relative to the permit process for the application? June 17 is the date of closure, and is that about what our DSAC meeting is?
So this was something we were gonna talk about in the second half, but we can talk about it now, which was potentially changing the cadence of DSAC meetings to once every 2 months instead of once every month. When we started meeting last year, we had a large backlog of work to do. We had all of these annual public comment reports that we had to get through. And we've now gotten through most of them, or all of them rather. So it's something we can discuss. We could start once every month after June, or start it this month. But maybe that we can just kind of consider that for now and discuss it at the second half. All right, so we're gonna table the PFAS presentation for now. So what I would suggest.
This is Paul, can I make a comment about that? As a recommendation, if we can't do it tonight, we do it the next meeting, if we meet in June, but is she required to like submit the presentation beforehand so people can see it beforehand on the site? Is that thing that can be done so people can see it, I guess? I don't know, I'm just.
Sorry,
I'm
Paul.
asking.
Well, the actual full length is available through a link through the Clean Water Symposium. So
Oh, okay.
that's available on YouTube.
So I didn't know if it was your presentation. that
It
you
might,
could
that's a
give.
subset of what already
Oh,
exists in full format
okay.
elsewhere.
Oh, okay, I wasn't sure.
Me neither.
Paul, you were just asking out of curiosity.
Yeah, I was just because, like, she was debating whether I could see PowerPoint slides on her printout. I'm like, well, if it's gonna be a presentation, like a PowerPoint presentation. And if she really wants that visual, I just recommend that,
Or just in
maybe-
case there's IT problems.
yeah, like she can upload it and there's a presentation. Let's say we get the IT fixed. For next time she can present it, we can see it on the screen, so we kind of can follow along.
Yeah,
Instead of taking notes and trying to figure out what's on the screen. That's just my
Yeah.
2 cents.
It's,
Is he?
I watched the one that they had on YouTube and it was real good, so it would be a hard trick not to have.
Yeah,
put
it's very
together,
reactive
because She gave a
presentation.
lot of additional information, but it was a good visual. too.
Yes, let's see, the bottom line is, I try to provide references and essentially the science behind what a lot of the public comments said. Because when you're not clear where the public's getting their information,
Yeah.
then, try to add some references and sort of backfill, what others have said. And so, but maybe just a smidge more detail. And kind of the upshot is, there's been some really interesting work by the EPA, probably will be discontinued. That takes sort of a mass balance approach and looking at refugee emissions and what percent of, and it's all PFAS perspective, but what ends up is refugee emissions in air and potentially groundwater when you look sort of nationally, so at all different settings. And how the mass of PFAS going out, we don't really even hear much talk about it, is in the volatile PFAS that's going out. The stuff that's washing over David's house, that, because there's really not much information yet, but so it's adding that piece, and what you get is on a yearly, annual basis, the estimates from a national surveys that we have participated in is the emissions in gas phase, when you add it up, and the emissions in leachate are about the same. And so it's an important component that's leaving landfills.
So are you referring to the 1 or 2 exploratory research papers that the EPA has put out that are not really kind of definitive? Because when I've tried to research some of the stuff about the EPA, that was referenced a lot of times about volatile PFAS, there's very little, and it's almost like it's an infancy stage of trying to understand
But we're the
compared to what.
inputs, so we
Yes.
generate data, and so we
Right.
have, from landfills across the United States, does not include Coffin Butte, was not in our sample set. And so these are direct measurements, and when you take the flow times the concentration, and and it's not that part of it, that's Marlax out of NC State. And so what they do is that's how you get that emission estimate, then you look at the landfill volume, depending on where you're at, times concentration, and they look at those masses and say relatively speaking. So we have enough data on leachate, on national survey, and enough data from our national survey of landfill gas, which is not published yet, but our method has been published.
Is it the
That's
OTM?
those estimates show that they're about equal masses.
What's the method, OTM 51?
No.
Or-
It is a thermal desorption tube. We pull
Okay.
about 200 mils through that. We have full quantification and then thermal desorption gas chromatography mass spectrometry with all the quality control.
Because right now, the EPA uses OTM 51, I think it is, and it measures basically the fluoride within that. It doesn't measure PFOA or PFAS specifically, correct?
So, actually, I'm gonna just interrupt
Okay.
the discussion, because I feel like, yeah.
We can have that
I
discussion.
feel like we,
I'll have
as
to
a
brush
committee,
up on
need to be
those
brought up to
elements.
speed before we
Right.
can like be able to follow along with what you guys are talking
Okay.
about. So
Okay.
why don't we just pause this for now? It's
That'd
all
be
good.
good.
Just quickly, what I'd like to do with kind of the remainder of our time before the break is go over the meeting minutes from last time and then start discussing what DSAC does as a committee and what our priorities are for the rest of the year. So did anyone get a chance to look through the minutes from last time? Bailey, I think I made a correction over email that you already fixed, right?
I haven't fixed it yet, but I will.
Did anyone have any notes or?
I have a comment and a question for Paul. This is Dave, let me say it, by the way. So on page 9, 4th bullet, I think that's supposed to be my name. It says Livy echoed. I think it should say would say echoed.
Thank you.
Any other notes?
And then my question was for Paul. Very last page 14 of 15, under the header updates on landfill operations and monitoring, groundwater monitoring efforts, Paul Coster shared an update on ongoing monitoring. Installation of 18 or 16 new wells is ongoing program. Now, and it says they're groundwater monitoring wells. Are they groundwater wells or?
No, they're gas wells.
That's what I thought.
There are 16 new gas wells that are online. They're not groundwater wells.
Is there a way to clarify that? I
Yes,
can give you an edit or you can. It's
However you'd like.
It's under this groundwater monitoring efforts, and then it says efforts to monitor groundwater, mentioning a recent installation 16 new wells. It infers anyway that they are groundwater monitoring.
I'm not sure why it's under groundwater.
I don't know
think
either.
that
That's why-
should be gas well.
That's
monitoring. It
why
should be
I
gas
thought
well
it
monitoring,
should be gas well,
Yeah.
landfill gas monitoring, not
Yeah.
groundwater monitoring. Try to learn that.
Okay,
That's all I have.
thank you. The correction I gave Bailey was to remove item 5 on the action items, which was that we were gonna have a representative present at the hearing, the expansion hearings, which I think we decided not to do. That's just a bit clear. Did anyone else have any other notes?
Did the letter go in?
It did, yeah. So, thanks to Dave and Charlie, we got a draft together and submitted it to the planning commission by the deadline. And it was what we discussed, which was just basically a cover letter for our most recent community concerns report, just kind of outlining the kinds of concerns that the community has communicated to us, to the county, and that it may in all likelihood.
The chair of the planning commission recognizes.
All right, if there are no other notes, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes with these corrections.
Excuse me, what? I couldn't hear that.
David, we're just moving to accept the minutes with corrections. Good. Thumbs up from David. I'm gonna take that as a second. All those in favor?
who was first?
That
Thank
was
you.
first.
Okay. All right, there were a few action items in the minutes, that we're gonna work through. Paul, I think you, were gonna look into a hydrology consultant. You're still working on that in your free time?
He is hesitant unless he gets paid to spend his time, which is gonna be very expensive on our part, we cannot budget that, so unless he's subpoenaed by a legal body, he just kind of hesitant to get involved with this type of work. So I'm kind of trying to smooth it on with him and kind of bring him on, but he's very leery about stepping into little things that they just came up to speed on. So they've only been here for a year, they're still understanding the whole thing. They have all Eric Tuppin's work from all the years, and I would say, as you said, refer to Eric, because he's the expert who's been here for years. So you can better speak to a lot of stuff, sorry. You know, and I know he doesn't want to, so.
Eric's retired and is riding his bicycle. What is that?
And the fact that there is volumes and volumes of Eric's research and data that they've been trying to go through to really fully understand this place. It does take a team effort to do that, and he just really doesn't have the time to do this extra work. So I apologize to the community that, you know, that's kind of where we stand right now. So I'll try to still kind of bring him on here, hopefully maybe in a couple months.
Okay.
You know, we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of it will depend on what we decide to do in terms of pursuing the groundwater monitoring topic, right?
Mhm.
Like, it may be that there are pointed questions that.
Yeah, Rachel, it seems like a logical place to do that. That's why I was asking about the annual report.
Mhm.
When we get the report, as Bailey mentioned, this group is going to be charged with reviewing that on behalf of the county. And a lot of it is gonna be groundwater in there. And maybe that's the time to really dive into it.
I mean, sure, if at that point, there's specific questions and that, you know, that I can redirect to him to answer, I more willing to do that once it's reviewed, and I can say, hey, this committee has some questions. We can move forward with that, but he just can't expend the energy and really kind of not willing to.
I get it.
So,
I
yeah.
get it. I took a swing at that 2023 report. I was working with Rachel and I wrote up a little summary. But yeah, that took a while, and that's just scratching the surface of it.
Right.
To really understand the trends and what we're seeing and how well the network is functioning. So it's gonna take a newbie quite a while.
Yeah, and
But it's important, and I think the 2024 report, just rolling up the sleeve and diving into it is gonna be a good way to start that process.
makes sense. Yeah, and I think, having that 2024 report will help, like, it's the difference between having like an open-ended conversation and like very.
It gives us something to really say, this is what I meant, yeah.
There are two different, I mean, there are many different reports, but there's the overview of the landfill operations and PRC operations that's in the report that Paul had mentioned earlier. There's also an environmental report. I think you
That's the
maybe
one I-
already,
Yeah.
which is
That's my-
much longer.
That's my-
Yeah.
All right, so, we only have about 10 minutes or so until a break, but I wanted to get a conversation going about two things. One is just what DSAC is doing generally. And then two, to talk about, three areas of focus that we identified in the March meeting. One was methane/odors, another was PFAS/leachate, and then the third was hydrology and groundwater. So, we kind of just identified these as areas that the committee wanted to focus on, but we didn't actually decide how and what we want to do with those. So we might have to table that portion of this discussion till after the break, but just to get things started. Jennifer, the last meeting, you mentioned that there was still like a fair amount of like a lack of clarity on what we're supposed to be doing as a committee. Is that right?
I definitely felt that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so Bailey, I think you passed out copies of all of our, we have a kind of charter that lives in a variety of different parts of the code. So it's the page that starts with ORS 459.320, which is our state mandate. Which is basically just that we have to exist and what our membership consists of. It's very broad, like the language there isn't very much here. It's mostly just that we are here to review the operation of the landfill, including its like long-term monitoring, exposure, everything about it, to provide a forum for community concerns and questions, to prepare an annual report of those concerns, and then anything else the board of Benton County Board of Commissioners wants us to do. So I feel like, I think this gives us like a lot of flexibility to kind of identify what we think are the main priorities in terms of helping the Board of Commissioners and the county, deal with cough and view. But it does put a lot of pressure on ourselves to like figure out exactly what we want to do, and we can be as productive or unproductive as we want to be. Does anyone have any thoughts about the text here or anything that you feel like is not?
Well, those duties, this is Jennifer, what strikes me is number 2, is we are a forum that just occurred tonight and has occurred in the past. So that seems to be functioning well, and I think we all understand that. Number 3, preparing an annual report. We've been approving past reports. That seems to be a function working well. New modern ways to capture that information. So number 3 seems to be underway. As far as I know, we have not been charged by the Benton County Board of Commissioners for number 4, but we stand ready if asked. It's probably number 1 where the greatest degrees of freedom are in terms of what the community decides to do. Citing, I'm not sure what that means other than where it is, and it's just kind of fixed right now. So I don't think there's much to be done about that. Expansion is not, I mean, we know a lot about that. We're participating in that. There's another committee reviewing that. Operation, that has been come up. A lot of interesting back and forth about the fire and changes for lots of reasons, right? Including the recent incursion under the property. So that's changing. So it's I'd say my interest, or where I could learn the most, is probably in closure and long-term monitoring, which is related to the groundwater monitoring, because refugee emissions to the groundwater is a known issue, probably site-to-site variability. There's a new piece on how materials pass through liners and to what degree and the rates at which they do that, and rate of puncture. And I learned from listening to the testimony, meaning like, yeah, the salt is sharp, right? Those are sharp rocks. You got great membranes, but you still have sharp objects coming up against a sharp substrate. So it's probably a thing.
Can I repeat that? It is,
Sure.
you have the salt, but you have 4 feet of round rock that goes on before you even put a liner piece on. So you have a total of 8 feet before you even put 8 to 10 feet before you put trash on. So you just don't put a liner right on the salt rock. You put a lot of round rock that is specific. You don't want those sharps, obviously. So you want to create that boundary before you even think about putting your first liner layer on.
And then sharp things go on top of that. So that's not my original work, but I just saw it recently. It's maybe something worth considering. It seems plausible. Despite best efforts, right? Brittleness over time, that incredible amount of weight that goes on in these materials. I mean, it's an engineering feat. So anyway, that's my thoughts, is that closure and long-term monitoring have the most, that's probably what the community is interested in, right? Those are the greatest unknowns and the greatest challenges that we face.
Chuck, before, just hold on 1 second. I did want to mention one thing, which was, I didn't talk at all about the bottommost piece, which I think we kind of internalized anyway, but it says that the board, so it wants us to be, the Board of Commissioners wants us to be attuned to the thriving community's core values in focus area, which was language that the county set forth in 2018 or 2019. Something like that.
Sounds about right.
But it basically, they're the kinds of things that you would expect for Benton County. So it's like community resilience, access, high quality environment, access to the environment, things like that. I will forward these things to you, these documents to you. But I mean, I think these are, whatever we do, something that we need to keep in mind is that we're trying to be of service to the county and to the board on very specific kind of core values related to our community. Sorry, Chuck.
Oh, no, that's fine. I used that once too. There was a good example where you're looking down to 3 different lenses and trying to take everything in, and all of a sudden you get clarity with those stuff. So that's the way I put it in that perspective, although I'm blind most. Just to follow up on Jennifer's comment, I think sitting is an underestimated goal, but it's a very important goal, because if you will, everything's somewhat finite. So when you talk about sitting on a landfill, it doesn't necessarily specifically Coffin Butte. It can be, is there other landfills, geometrics that can better control PFAS than here and stuff like that? I think that's still within our realm. In other words, DEQ has programmed 2 landfills in Eastern Oregon, and they've got a reservation out there for 200-300 years. But do those landfill, are they better than Coffin Butte? I think that's within city. We can look at that and say, hey, we have a finite time here. We may have to go to some other place, and then can it be seated there with an expectation from the community that it meets a certain criteria? And that's why I like to put it in that context.
Did anyone else have any notes, or Dave? I think you're,
Real quick, this is Dave, let me say, I think it might be a question for Bailey. The last bullet said, response to the public and making progress on board priorities. Is there and maybe it's all kind of is there a list, a bullet list of their priorities?
I think that
That would be kind of handy to have.
Yeah, I think-
So that we can point to it and say, oh, here's a priority, oh, that's not a priority. 'Cause
I
we're
think
kind
the
of making it-
2040 thriving communities could be considered their priorities.
It's like a set of guiding principles for any organization, we can start to flounder, well, let's go back to the principles, it was supposed to be this, and this.
yeah. Yeah, I have two documents from, Sean McGuire, and I'll forward them to you all, but, I can just read out what the principles are. So it's vibrant, livable communities, supportive people and resources, high quality environment and access, diverse economy that's community resilience, which relates to disaster preparedness and threats, equity for everyone, and health in all action.
How that evolved is that the county dealt with all the communities in the area, and they set up a committee and they evolved those what to do. So that's what the priorities are.
Okay, Dan, did you have a note?
So I don't know if this is something that, this committee would look at, but. If there is no expansion, the landfill has 12 years. If there is an expansion, it has 18, is that right?
Mhm.
And so, what I've been thinking about is, would this committee be interested in looking at ways to extend that by reducing what goes in there? Whether by diverting food waste from restaurants and grocery stores, or having some kind of a metal recycling center, or, some, is that something that this committee is interested in looking at, is ways to diminish how much garbage goes in to the landfill, to extend the life of it?
So that's something Bailey could probably speak to. He's
There's another committee that is not active right now. It's been put on hold, called the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, and those kinds of topics are probably lend themselves more naturally to the SWAC, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. But in the absence of that committee, I suppose this is probably the best venue. My hope is that the SWAC will be reinstated, so that they can address those types of issues and looking at programs to reduce waste.
I can speak to it a little bit. I don't know. Can you hear me, Bailey?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I was just at the just at the NRAC meeting, Natural Resources Advisory Committee. At any rate, there's a sustainable materials management committee. And they are supposed to talk about food waste as one of the 4 subcommittees. And that is like, they're bringing to the Board of Commissioners next month their recommendations. So it's not like the solid waste disposal site is the only place. NRAC is looking at this as well, and you probably know about this too, Bailey, right?
Yeah, this has been a project we've been working on for a year or so. I haven't mentioned it or brought it up in previous meetings because it's a little bit outside of the scope of DSAC. But that committee is working on a regional approach to reducing waste. There are 4 committees: the built environment, so things dealing with deconstruction, instead of demolishing, trying to ensure that there's places that that material can be taken to and separated. Another committee is food waste and looking at preventing food waste in the first place. A third is looking at products and packaging, which is looking at like furniture or textiles, kind of some things that fall outside of the Recycling Modernization Act. And then the fourth committee is looking at regional systems for how solid waste could flow down the road, kind of with an eye towards the eventuality of Coffin Butte eventually closing. That report will be presented to the Board of Commissioners on June 17th. And the full report will be released in July. The report itself is going to be about 20 pages or so. And then for those of you that are interested in more information on it, it'll have a compendium that has much more of the work. The hope is that if there's a piece of legislation now that would create a state level task force that would build on the work that this task force has been doing.
There's so many questions. This is Diana. Is there somebody in the county looking at alternate sites?
Mm-hmm.
There is.
Yes.
Is that person you?
No. Oh, is it me?
Yeah.
Well, it's me amongst others. I'm not the only one.
Jennifer.
There were quite a few comments on the May 6, 7 testimonial days about rail shipping to Eastern Oregon into the lower, rainfall, lower leachate generation setting, which I thought was interesting. At least 2 people spoke to that possibility.
Because it seems like it would take a long time to get that set up.
A very long time is very expensive, very expensive. And to that point, where there is a comment, and this keeps going around, that drier landslides, drier landfills produce less leachate and gas, which is a false. They produce as much leachate and gas as wet landfills, but over a longer period of time. So it is ameliorated over time. So in order to get that digested in the landfill going, they have to recirculate or do whatever they do to get that mass wet enough to start that decomposition. So it might ameliorate it over time, but they do produce as much leachate and much gas just over a longer period of time. So, and it is very expensive to haul that long distance. Just the costs have not been figured out yet because we're not at that point. But one of the parts of not only expansion to continue at Coffin Butte, but people argue against the expansion because the county doesn't have a waste plan in place. I think the position could be that by giving the expansion allows more time for them to develop that. But I can't speak to that. If that'll say, oh, well, we got more time, we can put it off again. That could be the trade-off. If we don't get the expansion, then they have to expedite and try to figure it out, or we get the expansion and they say, well, we got more time now to push it off to somebody else. So it's hard.
So that's an interesting comment. So you're basically saying, and I love that, is the mass emitted over is going to be finite, no matter what, and depending on how much garbage in there, it's the rate.
Right.
But at the same time, that's volume, but also the volume you have to treat.
Right.
And if you're going to treat it, so you're having a lower volume and that's potentially lower cost, rather than going through a dilution snare and generating larger volumes of it that get diluted into systems. So I'm wondering if the controls that inevitably could be more focused on systems that generate lower volumes.
Are you talking about for Coffin Butte or someplace?
Anywhere where the wet versus dry situation.
There's landfills in the middle of the desert that have liquid problems, believe it or not. So, not necessarily Republic or Waste Management, Waste Connections, but there are dry sites that are supposed to be dry that are having problems. So it's not just a wet site issue. It can also be a dry site issue.
Sure, but
you know.
would it make sense that the costs involved with treatment are proportional to the volume being treated? And so if you have lower volume generated, but over a longer time,
Right.
then you also potentially have lower concentrations of the dose mix of poison, right? That if you have less gas emissions, got more dilution.
Dilution is not solution.
Especially when it comes to PFAS, that's true, but for some chemicals it is that have atmospheric reactions.
All my environmental science has always been, all my professors always said dilution is not a solution. I know to a certain point, I agree.
That's why trickling leachate, the wastewater treatment plant doesn't sound the answer, because it's not, dilution isn't solution,
Right.
which is what that's happening. So I agree, no question.
Okay, so I'm gonna pause here. Let's take a 5-minute break, reconvene at 7:11. Okay, so I wanted to talk about these 3 priorities that we identified in March. Is everything okay?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I did just want to mention, one thing that in all of that charter language, like there is this language about working with the county commissioners, and I did want to mention that this year we did in fact do a little bit of that. David Hauptman was working on with Paul on Fireland, the board asked for some clarification on some actionable.
Yeah, that was a bit.
Yeah. Okay, so we had, in March, we put up a big board and with a whole bunch of possible topics for us to look into. And we took some votes, and there was 3 areas that kind of came out on top. One was methane and odors. The second was PFAS and leachate, and then the third was hydrology and groundwater. So, the question is, what do we do with these priorities? Like, what do we, how do we want to proceed, having identified these 3 topics that we're interested in looking into more? One possibility is we could set up some subcommittees, and then just kind of go off and do work in smaller groups. Maybe with an eye toward giving presentations to DSAC at some point with findings. So it's something we could do. It's part of the challenge is there isn't like one question that we need to focus in on with any of these areas. They're like, big topics, right? We should do like endless research on. And we kind of need to figure out what the shape of these topics are and the areas that we need to focus on, and whether there is anything actionable to be done. So does anyone have any ideas for how to proceed? Maybe we can start with David Hackleman. So David sent me an email right before the meeting, which has fallen out of my brain already, but suggested that we could look at, for odors, look at what could be done in terms of odor monitoring to kind of quantify the problem some more. So that's like a very kind of focused question that could be looked into. So one thing we could do now, or as a committee, is identify our main questions in each space and then give subcommittees marching orders. I can keep talking, but I don't think it's going to be very productive.
No, I'm used to work with Mark Metz. Once he said enough much.
So we could say, just for example, methane and odors is a big topic all by itself, and it's really 2 topics. But I know Charlie, you're interested in methane, right? David is interested in odors.
Charlie, you're muted if you wanted to.
I know, I actually just said I'm interested in everything, but.
Yeah. Okay, I'll stop talking for now.
Well, methane and odor are related, right? Because they're all gas phase molecules your nose picks up. Your nose doesn't smell methane, so odor is a proxy for methane.
And PFAS.
And everything else is volatile, yeah. So it's just a proxy. right? But they're all related. It's the same thing. It's just whether you want to talk about this molecule or that molecule. So you're really talking about the gas phase emissions to landfill. How much, where's it going, what's in it? You know, what evidence is there? For example, people have monitored, vegetation downgrading of landfills. They've done air monitoring on grading landfills. They can pick up all various species. So that is actually one thing. And if you want to subdivide it into subtopics, you can. For example, there's the remote sensing of methane. Remote sensing doesn't probably work for odor. So you're kind of looking at the same problem, just different lenses. When you talk about groundwater, you're really talking about refugee emissions, if there are any, and leachate that can then move off-site and carry with it, whether it's arsenic, if you're interested in that, or if you're interested in any other contaminant, or that includes PFAS. So you're just talking about the two major sources of refugee emissions from a landfill. And it breaks into those two chunks. And then within that, you can then subdivide or parse or focus on one thing, but you're getting the same info. If there's methane, there's the other odor carbon things, just maybe below the odor threshold. If you're smelling odor, for sure there's methane there, because they co-occur.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, that we're really not talking about three different things? It's really kind of like two major phases, and then what you want to pursue or how you understand that is taking, then that's maybe a molecule specific route.
Yeah, that's really helpful, because when we were identifying priorities, I think I was momentarily confused. I was like, well, what's the difference between leachate and groundwater is a question anyway. It's, you know, a question of where it gets captured.
May I interject too, please?
Yeah.
I would like to compliment the comment and point out that, yes, the odors, are one thing, but it's any emissions. And, some things have odor and some things don't. But anything that goes into the air, which includes aerosols and particulate matter, I think that's one part. And then the other part is anything that goes into liquids that then transport through the subsurface. Okay, so I think those are two topics that we need to work on. And I'm happy to help out. I volunteered to be involved in the ones that are emissions that go into the atmosphere, if that works for everybody. And but I also think that the emissions that go into the liquids into the ground are quite important too. But in both cases, I would say that people seem to respond more to odors because they smell them. The other stuff, the liquids are things that people don't really know about, but they're quite important. So if we focus on those two, I think that would be pretty important. Thanks.
Thanks, David. Yes, Paul.
So I want to kind of take that and kind of take it one step back a little bit and just ask, what causes the odors? And I know people not gonna like this, but I think to Diane's point earlier, like, what can we take out of landfill? And I think it's part of, maybe as part of this, I don't know, this committee, is community education. What causes the odors in landfill? Food waste, a lot of organics. How do you get those organics out? By educating the people that say, hey, put this in your green waste bin so it can go to a recycle center for it to be used as compost, not go to a landfill. That helps reduce that aspect from the outside coming in. From my perspective, it is targeting, figuring out where we need to put wells in to cover the gas collection area. Where is this well being productive? No. Well, let's take this one out of commission and draw another well that can, because maybe that well is pinched or it got crushed in the ground and we can't pull gas anymore. Maybe we have to drill a new well. This is an ongoing process. Or do we look at covering a final cap of certain areas of landfill? So from our perspective, those are the things that we can do. But I think having the public in general understanding what's coming in the landfill that causes odors and things like that would also help us reduce the odors on site by getting organics out into a compost. And that kind of goes a long way, I think, into reducing that aspect of the odors. And, that also helps, and to your point, reducing the amount of volume going into the landfill. By getting restaurants and everything like that to collect.
I think Corvallis, does a pretty good job. But our garbage, Benton County's garbage is a minuscule amount of what goes into the landfill. You know, it's mostly Marion County.
I think this is a broader, you're absolutely right. This is a regional landfill. This is a regional issue.
It's hard to
And this is-
control those people,
Right, but it's,
educate them.
but it's about, do we have at the Salem Farmers Market, does DSAC, can we set up a booth and explain that? Or or whoever, I mean, those are things I think this committee maybe to explore. How do you do community outreach and educate the public about how to reduce and control, and from the outside, aspect of bringing stuff into landfill. I mean, when you drive into Coffin Butte, we have recycle for tires, metal waste, refrigerators, appliances, mattresses, oil. We have all that, so we don't have to, doesn't get into landfill. Julie, you're gonna say something?
Yeah, because I work with the numbers a lot, and Bailey, you're aware of this as well. So I think it's really easy to say we do a good job in Benton County and both other counties, but the truth is, both Marion County and Lynn County have higher recovery rates than Benton County has. So more is being recovered for recycling and for composting in both of those counties. But it's a hard nationwide. It is a hard sell to get people to do that. And you may not be aware that there's legislation right now that looks at food waste, mandatory food waste composting, rather than just telling people it's a good idea and hoping they do it. Or there's legislation about all kinds of things. We have the Recycling Modernization Act, which goes into effect July 1st of this year. So there's a lot happening outside of this bubble. And it feels to me like maybe that information needs to come in, because you don't have to reinvent the whole wheel in this room. There's a lot of stuff happening that could piggyback, I think, on what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, we could put it on the DSAC website, these little blurbs of, hey, do this, do that, hey, this is good for, kind of, however it's built to describe in this process, it's, that might be a different community outreach or something like that. That's just my thought as far as the others said. From, yes, kind of looking. So.
I think it's an interesting point, this is Diane, to look at community outreach.
It is.
On many levels, to educate people.
A lot of people, and I hate to say, coming from California passed a bill, and this is obvious. 1383, I believe, was for the food waste taken out of the landfills and to set up recycling centers. And we would set up in the little Saturday marketplace that happens once a month on a booth 5 miles from the landfill. A lot of people still did not realize that they should be putting their food waste, even though this was being pushed for years throughout all these cities and everything. So people saw like, oh, I didn't realize I could do that. Yes. And once you explain that process to them, it made sense. But they don't think about it.
Well, to be honest, Republic needs to do a better job as well. With their mailings.
I'm not being sarcastic,
Yeah.
I'm being really serious in understanding how we get that word out, because at the beginning of the year, we mail out informational pieces to every customer, either email or mail by post, and tell people what should go in, what should go in the organics cart, what goes in the recycling cart.
Yeah.
We have information on the website. We do farmers markets. We do try to get that information out, but it's difficult to get information out. We don't know, 10, 15 years ago, you could just put something in the paper. That doesn't really work anymore. Some people don't want to get it online. Some people, if you go down to the post office on the day that our flyer gets in the mail, because we do 4 newsletters a year, they're all over the floor and all over the recycling bin without having been read. So I think the whole industry and the whole world is working at how do we talk to people, because there isn't one method.
Yeah.
And so that would be great information to have. How would you like us to talk to people?
Yeah. So I guess I would like to propose that be the subcommittee.
Okay. All right.
And community education.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might make sense to make it a little broader than that, which is like community engagement.
Yeah,
And
sure.
which also includes making people aware of DSAC's existence, because we're supposed to be a forum for concerns, and
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes we get, some people are just not aware that we even exist.
I wasn't.
So to that point, do you say to the other counties, do you reach out to other counties and do you make contact with other counties and say, hey, we're a regional landfill? Do you reach out, does this committee reach out to other counties and say, hey, this is.
So I think this county does the same thing with outreach, and Bailey's been involved in Marion County. But what you may not know is that we all require counties and cities by DEQ to do a certain amount of outreach every year. So there are requirements, reporting requirements. We send a haulers collection report every year, and you can look those up and you can see the trends for the last 20 years as to how much has been recycled in each county, how much has been recovered for composting, how much per capita goes to the landfill. All of that information is reported. And it's really interesting if you ever get on that website. I can send them to you if you want. I mean, you could go through for hours and look at that stuff.
Jennifer.
So if you haven't seen the book Garbology, it's a really good one. It's for the public. It's not scientific. It's written by Ed Humes. He is a nonfiction writer. And Garbology traces the origin of landfills in the United States. And it goes back to New York politics and keeping people happy. And it opens with the chapter on hoarders. And it basically says, your homes would look like this if we didn't have landfill disposal. It will also then say that this has been, and you can check the book, kind of seductively offered to people, like, here's the answer at a kind of low cost, we'll take your garbage away and it'll disappear, like that, problem solved. 30, 40 years later, here we are. So people in the United States haven't, in Europe, it's very different, right? They're packed together, the density is high, the waste management practices are under even greater pressure than they are here, because we have a lot of land. And that's why we look at landfills where we don't see, I'm no expert on that, but they don't have as much land to make landfills. So there's a lot of knowledge there. So I definitely recommend the book Garbology to kind of understand how did we get here. We didn't get here by accident, because it was a low cost, easy, gone, out of mind, out of sight, everything's good. Whereas, and then the public's like, what? There's a problem. So it kind of traces that. And I use that in my class to kind of help people be aware of that. One way to get to people is through their children, and at schools, like starting super early, right? And there's a lot of great models for getting information in schools early, combined with everything else you've talked about. So maybe they're already programs.
So we have an employee whose job it is to go to school.
So obviously we need more of all of this. And then the last note is, this has come up before, and that is the PRC. So the PRC, in my experience, so we often ride our bikes out there. In fact, that's all we did during COVID since they closed the ports. The odor of the PRC is very distinctive and very different from the landfill, and to me, and I don't think that's a managed site. I think that's is it lined? Is it so? As you divert food waste, you're diverting other residues there. PFAS to pesticides to whatever else is on foods, because it's in the food supply. It's no secret. But now we have material moving in that direction, but in a potential, and I don't know anything about it, but I think it's a mound of material and it serves an important function. But there will be contaminants associated with that. But now in a less engineered, potentially less engineered, less controlled. I don't have any idea what that actually means. So as we talk about diversion of waste, which makes sense, reduce the methane, now you're going to go with oxidative processes, PFAS still don't biodegrade. And other things are, and we know this, this came up earlier, Seattle had a big push for the city to use compost, put compost, get that food waste in the compost, use the food waste, based compost throughout the city. And then they put the brakes on that because they found a whole bunch of contaminants in the compost, because as that substrate degrades through aerobic degradable processes, anything that isn't biodegraded concentrates. And so I think Seattle, and I don't know the latest, but I think they put the stop on using compost. So it's an answer for some issues. It might not be the answer for all issues. And it's not something we've really talked about if diversion were to become more and more and more, or what is occurring at the site right now? Are there any wells? Is there any, I don't know,
What site are you talking about?
the PRC?
PRC, there are wells that surround it.
Okay, see,
I believe
but I didn't.
It is not lined, but it is sloped inward, and we do have channels that collect all of the liquid, and it does get collected and go into our leachate ponds. So nothing, it goes off site. We do have wells that, I don't know how many on top of my head, I can't.
Well, that would probably fall into David's.
I have no idea. It's,
Yeah,
I don't
it's all plugged in and all that liquid's collected, but all the food waste is completely isolated from all ground shipped. Yep. Oh, let me back, so there's a time where we get food waste, and if I remember correctly, that's kept separate than like the mass tree shredding that we have, that,
Yard debris.
yeah, yard debris.
Commercial.
That's just commercial yard debris that is used for compost that we, and put in windrows. That's completely isolated to the food decomposition process. And I really can't speak any more to that, because I don't know every process there,
And
but I
I
know
know
that's
nothing about it, so.
completely separate, so.
I can tell you the commercial food waste is composted on a paved surface, it's in bunkers. They're aerated piles, so they work much more quickly than the static piles that are more the yard debris.
And they're turned.
They're churned.
And unfortunately, concrete has recently been discovered not to be impervious to the movement of things like
That's
plaster.
current, modern.
I don't know that people discriminate between types. A lot of work in Australia because that's where they just figured that out.
No, I was just thinking of the old Roman concrete that that was like still better than modern day concrete. But who knows?
Okay, so what I'm hearing here is, to sum up, maybe two committees. One devoted to gas emissions and one devoted to liquid emissions. And then a third committee focused on community engagement, sorting out, how DSAC interacts with the community and maybe things that we can communicate to them. Does that sound good to everyone? So I think,
I couldn't really hear what the three committees are gonna be.
sorry, David, I'll try to project. So one committee devoted to gas emissions, one devoted to liquid, and then a third to community engagement.
That sounds wonderful.
So I think it's gonna be up to the committees to kind of identify their priorities, what they want to focus on, but maybe what we can do is set up a standing plan where at every meeting, we get a committee report from each of these three committees. And just kind of see if we can keep things trucking along. So,
what's the end game for the gas phase emission committee?
yeah,
Is it to say, oh, this is really bad, Paul, will fix it? Or I'm trying to figure out how we can be productive in helping to better help Paul manage his stuff.
yeah, that's a great question. You know me, like I'm all about deliverables, but I feel
Well, I am
like,
too.
something that's happened in the last year is like, questions have come up, right? Like we've had questions about carbon mapper and, methane emissions and groundwater, but we don't have people who are kind of focused on looking at these areas. And so the questions come up and then they kind of just,
Yeah,
because I think the committees and maybe as they report into DSAC will define those deliverables. But I feel like unless we get people kind of concentrated on these topics and talking about them, like we won't be able to identify what the deliverables should be.
okay, so that's one of the first.
Can I offer a snippet?
Sorry,
Um,
Dave, hold on one second. So for groundwater, you have a lot of questions, but you probably don't have
I
a
have some
60-page
thoughts.
report in mind,
I've got a lot of thoughts on it, and
Yeah.
to me, the starting point was when I asked Paul earlier, when are we gonna see the 2024 annual monitoring report? That's a real solid place to start, because it's got all the wells mapped out, it's got data, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And let's just tear into it.
Yeah.
And it'll take months to do it.
Right. Okay.
as a volunteer.
Is that an annual report?
Yes,
So you have the 2023 already?
we have the 2023.
Hold on, David Hackleman, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you an example on the aerosols and airs and gases and so forth. Basically, right now, what we have is we have people call up and say, hey, there's a smell. They have no clue where it's coming from. Okay, they don't even know what it is. Okay, and they can only smell it. Now, that has nothing to do, that's nice. That's very important information, but it doesn't really tell us much. It doesn't tell us whether it's coming from the PRC, coming from the landfill, or coming from somewhere else. So, I hate to assign what the cause of the smell is until we figure out a little bit more. And that's why I'm talking about a little bit of monitoring. And then secondly, you can't smell a lot of things, and they may be even more important what you can smell. So this will help the public understand what's going on, and it might feed right into the team that would be working on, helping the public move from its current process, which is you throw everything to a can, it goes to the landfill, to maybe something that might be a better solution. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, one potential deliverable, on whatever timeline we decide is reasonable would be like FAQs for the public or something like that, like what we know right now. Something like that we can put on the site. Just trying to develop some institutional knowledge in DSAC because, I don't want us to be in the position where as new members come in and old members go, that we are just constantly asking the same questions.
Thank you, yeah.
Chuck.
He raised a good point. What's the end game? So what I'm saying here is DEQ says the threshold is here. So we could look at the relationship between there. And then, state of Oregon passed, I forgot, what was it, 488 that said when new technologies come in for certain things, they can adopt them, but they left it. So that way, we know right out from the get-go, here's the range that DEQ means, and then if they want to venture out on something else, they can technology, but remember, it's regulated by DEQ threshold, this is what I'm trying to say, so you gotta keep that relevant.
Right, we're not just like pursuing some local minimums or pursuing minimums for everything, right? We're in a regulatory setting.
Yeah,
So I learned something that has to do with deliverables and the gas phase that David's talking about. On the May 7th public testimonial, I heard Kevin Kanaga, who I think is on tonight, talk about, I think the phrase, and I'm trying to take a lot of notes, a lot of notes for 3 hours. Carts don't trigger methane oxidation, soil does. So I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So maybe the committee could discover what fraction of the site is covered in soil, how many cells. I thought I heard somebody say no cells are closed. I'm not sure. I wouldn't trust my memory, but like that might be a process or phenomena that is related to suppression of, for certain conversion of methane to CO2 and possibly odor suppression. But I don't know anything about the percent soil cover when things are due scheduled. But I did hear something about not having cells closed, and I'm not sure if closure means soil. So maybe that's a process or something we could understand, that if there were recommendations, like if they were set up to do that, and if that's actually, the case, then maybe recommendations, or to understand when that soil is going to be applied. I also heard that soil supply may be difficult to obtain.
So, without going into all our responses, I'll just make this a blanket statement. I'll answer specific general questions that is public, like without waiting. We're gonna respond fully as a company to all the comments and all questions and everything. But for here, yes, we have 50 acres that are closed. That whole south face that has grass, that has soil, it has an HDP membrane, 4 feet of native soils with native vegetation on top. That is all closed. Here, that's like 40 acres or so of that whole south slope. You can see that has grass, that's all closed. So we do have cells.
And for example, I don't know
Yeah.
what percent of the site that is, and then what's the staging in for closure? That might
Right.
help us understand how this will evolve. over
Yeah,
time.
so part of closure is part of our closure, post-closure, we plan to close so many acres per year over, you know, after, we can start now, or we can start when we're actually take the last ticket, like in 12 years, we can wait till everything, but that's not practical, to be honest, because it takes about a year, given our weather here, to close probably a 12 to 15 acre chunk. Because you have to scarify the material, you have to bring in more material, you have to redrill wells, you have to do this whole process. So it is a long process, so we have to do it in stages. We just don't wait to the end and go, okay, we're gonna cover 178 acres. That's impossible. So as I spoke to Rachel earlier, one of the goals is to potentially look at maybe closing a little corner, that little lower corner, the southeast corner of the landfill that has EPDM on it, that lower part, get that whole bottom part, because that is the final grade. So we're looking at that. It's just, it's a budgetary thing. So we have the stuff set aside, but it's just timing. Can we have the manpower? Can we do it? Can we get the design in to get it done? You know, we're trying to accelerate some of those points.
I have a question, has the 30-year clock started on those 40 acres that you closed?
No, it starts when the whole landfill is closed.
Just to put it in relative terms for me, and it took me a year to figure this out. Instead of the acreage, I found a map that showed all the cells, so there was 1 through 6.
Correct.
So when you say cover an area, I don't know if that's covering the cell site, that's the.
Yeah, it covers,
perspective.
I believe it covers cell 1 and cell 1A.
So I'll look for that map that I have someplace that shows all the cell sites.
Yeah, and I believe like what we're gonna propose to close next year, cap, not close, cap is part of cell 4. Yeah, so it's up to debate. It's gonna be something that we're gonna internally talk about, whether it's done next year or we plan for it the following year, but we're at the point where we have to really start planning to close certain, or cap certain
And
areas.
caps and closures, when you put a final lift on it,
Yes.
but you haven't closed it with DEQ, correct?
No, when you say closed, you put a final grass.
Cap.
Well, cap and close. When you cap it, you're closing that part of landfill. That there's no more trash. You're not stripping all that soil off and.
So with settles, you can't go back in and fill?
No, you can put more soil, native soil on. You can put native soil, but you never pull that off.
These are leading questions for you, so.
No, you will never rip off the final cap to put more trash.
Okay.
It is
Because
not,
of economics?
well, economics and then just the logistics. I mean, you cannot, and I don't know if there's I have to check the full permit, so don't quote me on it, but I believe once you cap an area, you cannot go back. Period.
Okay, so, we're coming up on 8. So to move things along, I would like to propose that we set up 3 committees, and appoint some people to those committees. So for gas emissions, Charlie and David Hackelman, I was gonna nominate you to be on that committee. Does that sound good?
Yep, I'm happy.
Charlie, is that good to you? Is that good for you? Is Charlie still on the line?
Sorry, I was gonna say, water, but you know, whatever.
Oh, I thought you were really interested in the methane question.
I am, but I'm really interested in the water, and I think it should be, you know, it sits on a wetlands. So I'm very interested in the water, but I know Dave is also, so I'm sure David's interested in everything, but I'm thinking hydrology Dave.
So I was gonna suggest Dave and Jennifer for water. But Charlie, maybe you as well, like the 3 of you, does that sound good?
I don't know. I think Jennifer is so smart about the PFAS, and they're so aerosolized as well as liquid. So I don't know.
Jennifer, would you prefer
Liquid
liquid phase
everywhere.
PFAS? Gas phase PFAS?
That's a different question. Bailey, didn't you send out an email, something about an air permit hearing separate? What, can you just interject like what that focuses on?
It's a Title V air permit, which all landfills and other larger facilities need to have. Because Coffin Butte has an air permit that has been administratively extended. Because Coffin Butte's grown considerably over the years, now they're looking at categorizing them at a different level. So that's this presentation that'll be coming up is about that application.
What kind of species get monitors as under that permit? Is it
No
methane?
clue.
Okay,
Well,
so there's-
methane would be among them.
So there is a general, just to speak to it, so just to back up, Title V permit has to be renewed every 5 years. DEQ has administratively delayed for the last 10 years in our new Title V permit. So this hearing is about renewing this permit and getting us up to basically a little bit of a back area, because we're so far behind in what their requirements are, it is kind of hamstringing us, and they're gonna bring us up to speed where we need to be for the size we are. They are basically part of Title V. You would include, say, example, the flare, the source testing, and NOCs, you know, is your destruction greater than 99%, by mass by weight, or MMBT, pounds per MMBT, things like that. I'm not gonna get into details, I'm sure you understand that a little bit. But your VOC, it's your VOC destruction, so you wanna know what your volatile organic compounds are being destructed, so things like that. We also have a mass emission rate for our tippers, our vehicles on site. We are only allowed so many pounds per year or something. I don't know what it's gonna show, but typically Title V will show all those tippers. Like if we wanted to add another tipper, we might not be able to do it because we might exceed our mass emission rate. So we might have to go to a propane tipper instead of a diesel, which is cleaner, or go to a Tier 4 engine instead of Tier 3, which is cleaner. So there's all that stuff that's built into this Title V, and it's pages and pages and pages long with every regulatory permit. So, and it's an EPA hearing. The public, I don't know if the public speaks, but I think the public does have some comment. I'm not sure, but I know the public does not speak, and we just sit and listen, basically, and this is a typical for this. And if they pass it, we expect to get this permit probably by late July, mid to late July. We're gonna put the speed on that.
So that's related to the gas committee, whoever has the aptitude for, that sounds like a fun meeting. Very detailed and technical. All right, well, thanks for answering that. It seems like it's somewhat related. I'm interested in both committees. I'll serve wherever makes
Okay.
sense.
Wherever you put us, Rachel.
Okay, so for Jennifer, why don't you work with David Happelman on methane orders, gas emissions? Does that sound good?
Try to do that.
Okay,
Excuse me.
Charlie,
Oh,
Sorry, go ahead.
on that subject too, could they look at the renewal of fuel out of methane? Because what we've got is a contractor out there pulling methane out.
That has nothing to do with this.
No, I know.
Oh, okay,
No,
okay.
But what you're saying underneath the tarps, you've got X amount of gas, okay? And they're pulling some of that gas out, okay? So they were showing on their scale, they were up about 7, I forgot what the quantity was, but you were producing around 10 or 11, not to find that again. So, yeah, so how much gas you're pulling out versus what was residual left. So that amount either has to be flared off, or it's residual there, or it's escaping.
Everything goes to the power plant, and every excess that's pulling from the field goes to the flare. So we have no control over the PMGC. They have their own permit and everything. They have their own Title V permit. That we can't.
are you talking about an expansion of PMGC?
No, what I was saying is that we're looking at methane gas.
Yeah.
right? So what you're saying is there's a reservoir out there, and they're refueling contractors pulling so much off, they're flaring so much off. And if you look at the scale there, there's still quite a bit in there, so I don't know if it just says resident or does it escape and so forth. I'll see if
Are
I
you
can
talking about fugitive, like if we're not
I don't
pulling
think-
enough and a fugitive's off, is that what you're referring to? Or
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that would fall
Okay.
under
conversation?
yeah.
that,
So I'll see if I can find that information.
because that was part of the whole carbon mapper thing we were looking at last year, was, you know,
Yeah.
what the fugitive emissions are.
Yeah, actually, their contractor that has that gave a, presentation to the county commissioners.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can find that and then I'll send it to Bailey and then he can distribute it so they declare. what
I think it's part of the public record that one, do you remember that when PNGC gave that informational presentation?
I've shared that in the past, but I can send it back out again if people are interested.
In terms of infancy, there was definitely a question about whether PFAS are combusted in that flame, and the answer, the suspicion is that very incomplete, because of inadequate temperatures. And
So you need 1800 degrees.
Something.
So the flare set at
crazy.
1700 at the middle.
But that's,
So
I'm just saying,
yeah.
it's, I understand it's being questioned, but there's almost no data.
there's no way to test it though, too. Or it
Yeah.
is, but it's about $100,000 a test. You'll
Very
never get
pricey.
anybody to do that long.
Very pricey.
Okay, so gas, we have David Hackelman and Jennifer, we have Dave Lipsey and Charlie on liquid, and then for community engagement, Diane.
Or myself.
Would anyone like to join Diane on community engagement? You get to get at least one more person. Okay. Great. Is anyone else interested in being on a committee? Anything really appeal to you? Liquid? Okay. All right.
Can I ask a question then?
Yeah.
Maybe it's directed to Bailey, I'm not sure. This is Dave, Levinson talking. I'm assuming our subcommittees are going to meet separately at time from time to time from this group.
Yeah.
And what is the protocol with that? If, since we're not in a public forum and all of that, if we can get together and have conversations at a coffee shop or whatever, or Zoom or whatever we're gonna do, is that fair game?
That's my understanding, as long as the committee doesn't have too many people on it where it would become a quorum.
How many does it take for a quorum?
Yes. How many does it take?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 6.
Close.
So, as long as we're less than 6, we can get together and chat and do whatever we wanna do.
That's my understanding, yep.
Okay.
I'll double check that.
My only other note is, Paul, I would imagine that both the liquid and gas committees will have lots of questions for you. So if you can just like keep me in the loop and let me know like what, you know, me and Bailey know what your like workload is, you know, I just don't wanna like overwhelm you with questions, like, we might need to revisit.
I can answer a question here or there. I mean, I'm already at 70 hours. Well, it's fine.
That's a good amount of sleep. But yeah, just, you know, like,
Absolutely, yeah.
Challenge,
I mean,
challenge.
any kind of thing that I reply, I mean, probably will CC goal to you just
yeah,
as part of, I don't know. I won't, I might not be able to get back to everybody right away, but I'll make an effort to respond to questions. But if you're gonna ask me questions, I would ask the committees to group your questions. I don't want to see 50 emails with 50 different questions, because that's just too much, and I'll be like, no. So I would ask you to group, please group them, and even committee, even the community outreach, you know, if you have questions,
I hear you.
you know.
okay.
So can we like filter our questions? Maybe if we have like some hydrology or water related questions, can we send them to you, Bailey? And you can compile them with the outreach committee and the water committee, and then send them and the gas phase committee. Forward them to Paul as a group so that we can get them to him all in one fell swoop.
I guess my question would be for Paul, whatever.
I think from my perspective is, yeah, I don't want 50 emails. I would like not to have 50 emails for 50 questions. But at the same time, if one email with 100 questions, I get at once, you know, the people that are doing water submit their questions and they're hanging around waiting for gas to submit theirs. I think it's like waiting like DEQ, like today I got voter complaints for 5 weeks. That date back to April 9th. So it's like, that's not gonna work. So I would say parcel it out. If one group is ready to have a group of questions, submit the group of questions. Don't wait for the other groups to, compile everything. That way I can start working on it.
Okay,
Like I have to answer everything at
So
one
the
time.
subject line should be DSAC Gas Committee, DSAC Water Committee, DSAC Outreach, and you're like, oh, they've been bundled by committee.
Yeah, I think that's easiest, yes.
yeah, good.
Appreciate the membership.
I guess we should call them subcommittees, right? So we don't.
Subcommittees, yes.
The committee, the DSAC. Anyway,
Committee of committees. That's a
Okay.
committee.
well, I've utterly failed in getting us out of here by 8, but hopefully we can get through these last few things quickly. So, so for the next meeting, why don't we plan on, I'll sort it out with Bailey, but 10 to 15 minutes and check in with each of these subcommittees. See where we stand. The question is, when do we want to meet again? So we could meet next month. We could change the cadence of our schedule to meet every 2 months. Does anyone have any strong opinions? Would you like to meet again before the planning commission makes its decision?
I'm wondering if we can just meet like during the normal DSAC meeting time as the subcommittees or something in lieu of that, and then do every other month to start as the full committee. That's my suggestion.
June have the subcommittees meet during that time.
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I like that idea.
This would stay in a rhythm, we know where to come, we can divide up in the room.
Yeah. we could-
Um,
the water people go there, the gas people go there, and the public people go out.
So if you said that would be a quorum.
I think it would be a quorum, and then
Yeah, you're right.
yeah,
Rooms,
Oh,
meet in
yeah.
different
and then
rooms.
we'd have to get it all on Zoom and stuff.
I will look into this and figure it out. An alternative could be that the committees could meet online or offsite somewhere. So I'll look into that and get back.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. So why don't we plan on that, and then we'll meet together as a committee in July. And is everyone okay with the idea of going once every 2 months? So meet in July.
Full committee to get back together, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, I do need to bring up, we do have an obligation to receive input from the public. And I'm not sure how we make sure that takes place.
There is an email I've only received, I think, one in the last year. But there are ways the public can still communicate with me, and then I can distribute that information and concerns to the committee. One, just particularly for the newer folks, we're required to meet 4 times a year. This is our 6th meeting of 2025. I guess I counted the tour as one because we were a group, but.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I mean, if we go to every other month, we'll be at 6 meetings, just to keep that cadence going. But yeah, Bailey, if you can forward community comments as they come in,
Mhm.
that would be helpful.
Okay, so my suggestion would be that even if we're not having a meeting in a month, like if next month we're doing the subcommittees and not the full, we still on the website point out that comments can be sent in if they want to be sent in, and they'll be reviewed by the entire committee.
Yeah, I like that idea. Okay, I am just gonna skip the agenda request items. If anyone has anything that they'd like to see on the agenda for July, just email me and Bailey and we'll see if we can fit it in. And does anyone else have anything that they want to raise? Any questions, concerns? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Can I make the motion myself?
I don't know, I think sure.
Some favor of adjourning. Thank you all.
Bailey, don't forget your phone over there.
Oh, thank you. And I'll stop the recording too. Thanks, everyone.